Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Zach Miller, and I'm so thankful for you guys to be here tonight. By a show of hands, how many of you guys would consider yourselves an entrepreneur? Raise them high. Put them down. By a show of hands, how many of you would say that you support small business or startups? Raise your hand. Put them down. Now raise your hand if you don't support small business or startups. There's the door. Picture yourself in this scenario. It's 5 years ago, you're trying to grow a business, and all the resources that you try and find don't really match up to what you want to do to grow the business. You go to different places, you hear different places to go to, you spend time and money to do those things, and it just doesn't seem like it's the thing that's really gonna help you. It seems like it's the same thing since 1900, or from 1984, which is when I was born. Great year. So instead of just whining about it, I solved my own problem. I was looking to meet other entrepreneurs. I was looking to find people that could help me grow while I could help them at the same time. And so I held a meetup with about 15 other entrepreneurs. A couple of you were in that room at that point. And for 3 hours, we met and we learned about each other. And I learned that entrepreneurs in this community were looking for each other. They were looking for people that were going through the same thing that they were too. Oftentimes we see things in communities, not just locally, that are produced by people who have never actually done those things themselves. How do you hire your first employee? How do you make your first sale? How do you let go of your first person? And so usually, or sometimes, the person telling you that information has never actually done it themselves. Think of the scenario of for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And so at that meetup, I realized that there was a lot of opportunities for people to groom each other together. For about a year, we would continue to have those meetups. And then I put something on called Start Norfolk, where we were hoping to get about 50 people in a room collectively to start a business in about 3 days. 150 people showed up, and 38 ideas were pitched. Kevin Curry was one of them. During that time, I'm speaking with someone that attended the event, and I said, "This is amazing." And we both said, "Yeah, what would happen if you worked for those people for 3 months or not just 3 days?" And that's where Hatch was birthed. That's where Hatch hatched. And so today, we're sitting here almost 5 years since that happened. All I wanted to do was learn how to grow a company. And now we're able to help start and grow a ton of different companies. Many of you, we've been able to help as well. And so about 18 months ago, I had the genesis for this event, the State of the Startup Community Address. I had seen that I had just gotten an email about the state of a city in many of the different cities in the region. I said, this is interesting. And I had also just started hearing people talk about, well, this is where we want our region to go, or this is what we think is the next big thing. And I said, well, what are we really building? What are the people that are actually starting companies doing? And I said, let's take an inventory and show it off. And so on this day last year, we had the inaugural, and today is year 2. And so this event is a celebration of where we are as a community. And this isn't just Norfolk, this isn't just Southside, this is Williamsburg, to Franklin, Emporia, to Eastern Shore, all the way to the ocean front. It's the media market. It's 1.7 million people. What are people actually building here? So that's why we're here today. If you guys are on the internet, which many of you guys are, this is how you can find Hatch, and this is also how you guys can communicate throughout the night. SSCA is for State of the Startup Community Address, and 2K is because we're trying to bring back the K in the 2000s. And many of you guys know that we are on a big kick for Hustle City because we believe that if you want to achieve something, you have to hustle to get there. And oftentimes our region isn't thought of as a place where people actually bust their tails and hustle to get there. So it's also a goal that other communities across the country think of our region as a place where hustle is happening. So throughout the night, if you guys want to tweet us or Facebook us or Instagram, use these tags. Throughout the way, we were able to meet a really amazing company that we now call our big brother, Dominion Enterprises. Without them, Hatch would never have grown, and they're able to really help grow the community. Locally, they have about 1,000 employees, but globally, about 3,200 employees with brands such as Homes.com and many of the traders that you guys have known. They're also that gem of a building right there. We also have some other sponsors that have helped us out throughout the way. So many of you guys are looking to start a business. Obviously, you need a lawyer to do that. So you can call Kaufman Startup. Opportunity Inc., really helping fill the workforce development in this region. Small Business Development Center of Hampton Roads, for all your financial needs. Opus Group of Virginia. Some of our newest friends up in Williamsburg, the Launchpad. And then if you guys have had too many drinks tonight, you guys can, their words, tap that app, Appacab on the way home. So how many of you guys were here last year? Raise your hand. So last year we left you guys with 4 things. We said in 2016 or in the immediate future, be on the lookout for fitness, on the lookout for logistics companies, on the lookout for tourism, and higher education. So many people in this region talk about the 3 pillars: military, tourism, and ports. So let's say that we took ports and rebranded to logistics, okay? So everything not just around that port and the deepest waterway in the country, but also the amount of innovation that can be around that. We found last year that just under 113,000 students are going to school in this market right now, which is about 10%. So, so Facebook last year also said that we were the #1 fittest city in the country. Some fitness people in the house, I can see it. How many here have heard about CrossFit? Raise your hands. So CrossFit started in the year 2000. In 2005, there was 13 CrossFit gyms. I don't go to CrossFit, if you guys are wondering. Fast forward to this year, 10,000 CrossFit gyms are there. It's based in California, but they basically license their concept to different gyms across the country. 41 CrossFit gyms are locally. And CrossFit has a net worth of $4 billion and millions of users. Who here has used CrossFit? Raise your hand. Who here has heard of the Olympics? Okay. So CrossFit has their own Olympics. In 2007 is when they started. They have a huge partnership worth millions of dollars with Reebok. And in this games, they have almost 300,000 competitors in a tiered approach, open games for the open public, and regionals in different regions across the world, and then the actual games, which is in California. In 2015, the champion was Ben Smith. Ben Smith lives in Chesapeake. He also owns a gym in Chesapeake, CrossFit. So knowing that we have such a big military presence here, Obviously, that's one of the big reasons why you have 41 CrossFit gyms. What's interesting is a similar approach to CrossFit games was started this past summer called Rough It, created by Daniel Velechki. And they brought hundreds of people to the oceanfront to put on this event. Again, things around tourism that aren't just what we would originally think tourism as. About a month or two ago, a lot of people, who here knows of Luke Hillier? A lot of people know. Great guy, has invested a lot of time and money back into the community. He says, I'm in Venice, California, and I'm looking, or I look out my window and I see this really cool jungle gym-like contraption for people to do body weight type of moves, similar to this. I want to bring that to the oceanfront. And so he says, I'm going to pay for this to happen. $150,000 or so. Unfortunately, City Council said no. Hopefully, over the next coming months, it will go back through and potentially come through. Logistics. Three big logistics companies we've seen in the market recently. Quick 180, which is Uber for shipping containers. Several thousand shipping containers are on our highways every single day, of which 30% of those are empty, not making commerce and wasting away our world. Quick 180 pairs the driver and the container together so that no container is left empty anymore. It's based just down the street. Carrier Logistics. Order fulfillment, customized for simplicity. And Port Technology Solutions. Three tech companies taking 100-plus-year-old industry and taking just a little bit of software and making it a lot stronger. And tourism. Busch Gardens this past year was named for the best landscaping. I mean, some people like that stuff. Who here has been on Apollo's Chariot? Did you know that it's the 6th best roller coaster in the world? Who here likes Apollo's Chariot? So what I hope you guys can see is that we have a lot of assets that we don't talk a lot about, but the rest of the world sees us as something that has something of value. If you guys remember from last year, my dog Ashbrook made the slide deck. This is the Ashbrook effect this year because I love roller coasters. Hopefully, we get an arena in Virginia Beach that can attract not only a professional team, but also large entertainment scales that people across the Mid-Atlantic will come to and use. One interesting trend that we saw this past year was mid-tier large franchises are starting to relocate in our region. iFly down at the oceanfront. Top Golf, just 10 miles down the road. So we're starting to see these type of businesses start to see our region as a place that they see good for their growth. Now, it's hard to figure out what to do with 113,000 people, but we're starting to see a lot of different programs that universities are putting on create entrepreneurship programs. A few, ODU Strom Center, Regent University, William & Mary, and Christopher Newport University, of which Blade from ODU Strom Center is creating, through 3D printing, products that can be used by people. You also might have seen the Maker Industries 3D printer outside as well. All right, stop me or raise your hand if you've ever heard that our area needs more funding. Raise your hand. Okay, that might be true. But we would like to look at those things and question, how much are you really working to get there? Are you just writing on a piece of paper that I have the next greatest thing, like you have right there, and I want to send that out, and that's worth $1 million? That's not what you're going to get, right? But if you actually go through the process and have something and have traction, you may be able to find some funding. Last year, we talked about financing being a huge hurdle to our region, and we said, here are some things that we may see in the future. About a month or two after our address last year, 757 Angels formed and started collecting deal flow. How many of you guys know what an angel investor is? All right. So an accredited investor is someone that has a net worth of about $1 million and typically makes individually about $200,000 or as a couple $300,000. Angel investors typically are accredited investors who invest in companies in exchange for equity. The 757 Angels launched specifically in the region last year to try and fund that were here but had sales or could collect sales from outside of the area so that we were not recycling those dollars among each other. So what's interesting is if you look at the immediate impact here, so this is when they launched. So they immediately hit above the national average, but then they consistently had growth through their cycles. So their cycles are roughly 3 months long, where companies in the beginning will apply, then the 757 Angels team will do their due diligence and say who's the right fit, then continue that process through more tiers. Of which through those 3 rounds, we'll call them, 8 companies made it through. Have any of you guys heard of any of these companies? Raise your hand. Of those 8 companies, 4 were funded. So just because you get to the final round doesn't mean that you're going to get funding. So the final round is kind of like Shark Tank, but it's really in front of those 100 or so accredited investors that they can look at those companies and say, this is who I want to make a deal with or who not. And of those 8 companies, 4 were funded. They collectively or directly invested, this number has changed actually, I heard today, so direct investment of $2.1 million more this year than was there last year. So that's actual money from those investors in 757 Angels that directly invested in those companies. Then, indirectly, so their introductions to other groups across the country, they were able to raise 1.1 additional dollars there. So about $3.2 million was invested more this year than it was last. I think we should celebrate that. But we still gotta go, right? We gotta keep going. In 2013, a few college kids were in their dorm and decided to create a social network. They looked for money locally and couldn't find it. They moved to Denver. They raised $500,000. On April 9th of this past year, they IPO'd. Currently, they're trading anywhere between $50 and $100 million, or $48 and $75 million. So that's a company that we lost. So great for the 3.1, but at the same time, students and children that we grew here, we allowed to go to Denver and turn $500,000 into millions. And I don't know if you guys have seen them, but they've gone into the elevator pitch on CNBC and are all across major media publications, and it's a company that we lost, Mass Roots. We talked about 7 cups of tea last year. A lot of you guys saw 7 cups of tea's Glenn today. Some of their investors are people who, the person who created Quora and the person who created Gmail. They have 1 million visits to their website each and every day. And since their conception, which is actually in a car on the way to Washington, D.C., they have 20% growth month to month. And Lisa is a mattress company. They raised $9 million, and they launched just about 375 days ago. They closed the year with $30 million in sales, selling mattresses. And because of this, they were able to create 30 local high-tech jobs. So good and bad. So not everyone can be funded the way that some of these companies have. So back to the hustle city mindset, if you want something, you have to go after it. So we did research on the top 2 crowdfunding campaigns in the world. Who here has heard of Kickstarter and Indiegogo? Everyone? So we looked at, in the last 3 years, projects that had successfully raised $9,000 or more. So successfully raised $9,000 or more. These are the companies that are there. It's 38 companies. Anything from a brewery to a mer pug, something to track home brewing. I didn't buy the mer pug. If it was a mer beagle, I would have bought it. You're right. Bucket ball, so tourism in there. So you see a lot of different things. Here's an interesting one, 46,000. This one right here, the Kickstarter staff picked. Raised the money, moved to San Francisco. So here are the 38 companies. Of these 38, all right, so we'll talk about 2 of these first. So Tidewater Comic Con, they raised about $44,000. They had a very successful event, bringing thousands of people, almost 20,000 people, to host an event. They sold out, and now they're going to do another one at the end. Someone just to have an event, and they can bring multiple people together through what they love. And Big Ugly Brewery, anyone here participate in this one? A couple people? By their successful Kickstarter, they were able to open the doors. Of the 38 companies, this is where they're broken down. Here's what's interesting. Indiegogo had 0 successful campaigns, so it's all Kickstarter. What's also interesting is we learned that many people who are from here don't use our city names as the city of residence to get funded. So many in New York and California that they use instead of using our region's name or city names to do that. So we have more financing options now, and I think we will continue to see those over the years as those successes go through. But we have to be creative when doing this. We have to look at our options and say, just because 757 Angels Group doesn't like me, doesn't mean that I can't figure out a different way to do it. And that's the type of community that we need to become. We need to become a community that wants to succeed. We need to embrace when things go bad and use those as opportunities to grow from. The Kaufman Foundation, which is based in Kansas City, I think Missouri. I always get confused with that. Is it Missouri? Isn't there a Kansas City, Kansas? No? I don't know. There's my blonde moment of the night. Sorry. All right. So the Kaufman Index, based in Kansas City, was created by a philanthropist who was a very successful entrepreneur who wanted thank you, who wanted to give back. And we'll learn a little bit more about the Kaufman Foundation as we go through. But they have an index that tracked 3 things: the rate of new entrepreneurship, the opportunity share of new entrepreneurs, and startup density. So the amount of startups divided by the total population. So we looked at a couple of things, the meetup scene, activity, and resources to see kind of where our region was. And so the Kaufman Foundation says that our region is the MSA that we used at the beginning. All right, so the meetup scene, we broke down into 4 categories. Meetups are opportunities where people go typically monthly or weekly in a recurring educational theme. Events are one-time big events or recurring annual themed events. Pitch events are places where companies go and actually pitch their concept. And spaces are places where some companies could grow. You could call them an incubator, you could call them a co-working space, you can call them an accelerator, you could call them a library. So here's the map: meetups, events, spaces, and pitches. What we're starting to see is that a huge piece of the density map is actually right here to ODU. And what you can't see on this map is that a lot of those are on top of each other. So it's even denser than it looks. So really, we're only seeing 2 pockets in the last year: Williamsburg and downtown Norfolk. There's stuff in other places like Franklin and Hampton and Newport News and Virginia Beach, but the density is coming together in 2 places. These are a couple examples of recurring meetups. Many of you guys have either attended or are the organizers for them. Things like Code for Hampton Roads Hack Night, the 757's Makerspaces meetups, the Ruby Group, Norfolk JS, HamptonRoads.net, a ton of different things. This is one, Open Build Night at the 757 Makerspace. So the first Friday of every month, you can head on over for free to the 757 Makerspace and just work on things by using their tools. How many of you guys have ever been to the Makerspace? Cox has an event called Get Started Hampton Roads. I was there last year. I think 2 of the finalists are here tonight, Crafties and Tenol. Congrats. 2 things that are coming up in the next year: Revolution Conf. I expected you guys to cheer for that. Come on. Pixel Fest, which will be in this building. And then another one, Tech Cocktail, put on events. So Tech Cocktail is a content distribution platform, and they had an event in Hampton where they brought together about 10 different companies to pitch, and one of them would go on, or 2 of them would go on to Las Vegas to their big Tech Cocktail event. One of which was Sean McDonald, wherever she is. Feedback. Programs. So there's a lot of programs out there now. Remember, we started Hatch because I was trying to figure out how to do it my own. And so instead of keep looking, I created my own. A lot of different places opening up. Hampton University's incubator. Portsmouth is opening Starting Block. Work Nimbly in Williamsburg. PTI in Hampton. A ton of different programs for entrepreneurs to start and grow. Also, formerly known as the 757 Creative Space, Sprout House. Clint, where are you? All right. And this past year, Launchpad opened, or had a re-grand opening, and it's really cool to see a lot of things going around the Williamsburg community in and around the Launchpad. Have any of you guys been up there yet? Really cool little space. So one of the first things that ever started Hatch was a thing we called Startup Night, where people would say, I want to know what's going on in my backyard, and I want to know who's doing it, and I want them to present. So we created an event called Startup Night, which many of you guys have participated in, where every month, 3 to 5 companies get to go and work out the kinks on their pitches. Some people do it to present to investors. Some people do it just to practice. The Kaufman Foundation, years ago, created something called 1 Million Cups, where they're trying to bring together people together in the startup community around 1 million cups of coffee. We now have 2 1 million cups in our market, one in Williamsburg and one at Stratford University, organized by this guy, Kevin Curry, right here. Resources. So a ton of different resources have come together over the last few years as well. Start Wheel, 1004, Launch Hampton Roads. One of the coolest organizations internationally is Entrepreneur Organization. If you are a founder of a company that is making more than $1 million a year, you qualify to be an EO. If you are starting a business, whether or not you join EO or not, your goal should be, hopefully, to hit their requirements. Because if you and your company make $1 million or more, you're in the top 4% of businesses in the world. They have a chapter here with dozens of members. Many of them are here tonight. So another story. I'm sitting at a job summit put on by TCC about 3 years ago. And it's with a lot of leaders and people that are doing great things for our community. And someone says, all our region needs to be amazing is if we could just recruit 4 companies with 1,000 employees. Seems expensive. So I'd been sitting in this meeting, there's about 40 people there. For about 40 minutes, I'm sitting there, and I finally raised my hand, and I had to say something. And I said, our community isn't like Austin. It's not like San Francisco. So we can't try and be them and start whale hunting. I have no problem with whale hunting when done in the right kind of way. So we said, what if we started and grew 1,000 4-employee companies? And so we started it. And so today we have about 107 members that are doing this. How many of you are familiar with Netflix? It's basically Netflix for business. It's business content on demand. So if I have a legal question, I can go in and get that. If I have a marketing question, I can go in and get that data on demand. So we're trying to start and grow 1,000 4-employee companies. A lot of people talk about office space being a struggle regionally. This past year, many people put together a program called Vibrant Spaces that allowed you to have 50% space and $20,000 in a grant. 6 companies were awarded, and these are them. Anything from Prince Inc. to Work Release to Muddy Paws. So activities, we're seeing a lot of activity again in the maker movement. Craft alcohol, just arts, and then things around the maker space. These are just a few of the local breweries that we have now. Are you a local brewery? Wait till your slide comes up, man. So as we start connecting all these things together, what other types of companies can we put around these things? You guys happy now? Jeez. So it's not just the alcohol concept. It's what else can we build off of this? Well, Norfolk Growler Company is a great example. So they build and manufacture 64-ounce growlers. We also have seen the emergence of arts districts, one up the block and one down at the ocean front. And Hampton just recently got one approved as well. So we're starting to see these communities within a community start to do what they want to do, which will allow us to market nationally what our options are. Remember, 5 years ago, people didn't know what to do. Now there's a lot of things, a lot of synergies that people can start doing together. We've also seen things like craft fairs that a lot of businesses are going to and leveraging many of those other spaces collectively to do things and are bringing people in together. How many of you guys have ever been on a wine tour in a specific area? We might be on the beer tour bandwagon. Who knows? That might be the next step. So makers are people who build products, whether it's by their hands or manufacturing. Things like Ivy Watch, Beer Bug, the MakerMex printer. We had our first outdoor music festival come back or start last year, Lava Music Festival. Over 4,000 people were there. And they are planning another one with a release in the coming days. The Norva was acquired, and the Virginia Beach Amphitheater got a new name. Anyone want to know what their nickname's going to be for that? Veterans United Home Loans. It's a tough one. Was it? Exactly. This great show started this past year. What? Who is that guy in the jacket? No, so what's really cool about Hampton Roads Business Weekly is it's a weekly business show that gets to feature 4 to 5 companies. And yeah, I'm the host, but let's forget about that for a second. This past year when we had this event, we didn't have this show. So now we get to feature over 250 different businesses that weren't in the spotlight just a year ago. There's also no other show like it in the country. So for us to have something like this is a huge resource for for businesses to hopefully strive to get there, and maybe one day beyond. And many of you guys have watched. Have any of you guys actually watched? Raise your hands. There you go. Thank you. And many of our thoughts tonight are from an interview that I did with Damon John, who created FUBU. Sundays at 9 on ABC. So many of some big names have come this year. Damon John of FUBU and Guy Kawasaki, who helped Steve Jobs grow Apple back in the 80s and 90s. What's interesting about Damon John is I asked him a question. I said, we live in an area where we're very reliant on 3 pillars. What should we do to grow? And he says, innovate. That's it. Don't try and recreate new things. Innovate. You guys might remember Oz from Freeping. She won 2 big awards last year. And this past year, the president put on this summit for the emerging global entrepreneurs. And she was named there, along with 5 other businesses, as an emerging global leader. How many of you guys knew that we had that this past year? Not many hands going up. So these are the type of things that we have to not only support, but tell the story. This is a big thing. So there's a thing in Buffalo called 43 North, where they're trying to invest $5 billion back into the Buffalo community. Our governor wanted to do our version at a smaller scale of $1 million. And that's okay, it's a good start. So of that, they will invest $1 million collectively into 4 different companies in their predetermined categories of bioscience and energy. And the winner in bioscience was a company called Ivy Watch. I don't know if you guys remember, but they were one of the ones that was on the 757 Angels slide. How many of you guys ever bought something online? Come on, I would hope everyone. How many of you guys ever heard of Shopify? They've done $10 billion in revenue to date. They have 160,000 merchants in over 150 different countries. Each year, they host a competition for the best companies in 2 months from their sales. This year, one of those companies was Lisa. So I think it was 5 or 6 companies through Shopify's own data, so it sales through their company, and one of the winners was from Virginia Beach, Lisa. How many of you guys knew that? I like finding things that not a lot of people know. And so we're putting the slides together, and we're done. We're like, we got everything. And then this thing keeps circling around about Google naming us an e-city. We're the only city in the entire Commonwealth that was named this. And Google puts this together Google nominates these cities as people that use a lot of digital trends through their platform, and Norfolk was one of them. How many of you guys knew that? All right, so that's why. Here's the Kaufman Index. Here's the map. So those are the cities that are on it. Many of them you guys know. Orlando, San Antonio, Austin, San Francisco, LA, Seattle. Last year we were 23. We've moved up 4 spots to number 19. Here's the interesting thing. Richmond isn't on that list. And our good friends up north are below us. Washington, D.C. is below us. So if the Kaufman Index and the Kaufman Foundation is probably the #1 entrepreneurial resource in the country, and we're at 19, maybe we should start brushing off our shoulder a little more. Maybe we should start getting more excited about what we have. Let's not think about the defeats. Let's not talk about the federal dollars that we may or may not be losing. Let's start hustling more. Let's get into it, right? We're up 4 spots when everyone thought we were going down, right? So if we can start thinking differently and start really looking at where we really are with our inventory, we'll realize that we're in a pretty good opportunity right now. No, we can't go down next year, obviously. That would suck. But this is where we are for last year. Up 4 spots. If I would have told you when you walked in here that we were better than DC and Richmond wasn't on the list, who would have believed me? I love you 3 people. If you look at the left side, it's really major metros. On the right side, it's more mid-metros, a couple big ones in there. But for us to be ranked as high as we are, that's a pretty incredible thing that we should be doing a better job at looking at. We should be doing a better job at marketing and telling the world why this place is where you want to start your business. So my closing thoughts for the evening. We need to innovate, not recreate. We have assets that are amazing. We have assets that other places in the world would dream of. Instead of trying to find new industries that might work here, let's innovate the ones that make us very good. You hear a lot of people talk about the new industries, and what do you hear about? This is a $40 billion industry, that's why we should go after it. Well, you know what? Some of our industries here are $40 billion markets. Why don't we actually just innovate those? Here are a couple of companies that we've talked a little bit about, but they're just innovating old industries. How can we take a taxi and just give someone an app so that they can get home? Quick 180, Uber for shipping containers. They're trying to make the world of shipping containers easier. Lawn Wizard, bridging the gap between people who need their lawn mowed and those who want to mow it. Lisa, innovating the mattress market. 7 Cups of Tea, finding active listeners and bridging people together who need to be heard. And Briefcase, making it easier for those who need legal essentials to get together. So when you hear someone talk about, let's create a new industry, or these are the pillars that we should focus on, question them. Why shouldn't we just focus on the ones that we're really good at and innovate those? Because that's what we're good at. If you guys have questions, you guys can go to that podium right there. We'll take a couple. But I thank you guys so much for being here tonight. If you have a question, just line up between that pole right there. Whoever wants to go first, you can do it and then pass it back. There's a pole right there. We'll take a few. You only get one. You don't get to ask multiples this year. Say your name and the company you're with too, so we can give you a little props.
My name is Carrington Falk. My company is Micah 3. I talked to a good amount of you today. I had a question. You said that a lot of companies didn't want to use this city as their city of record. And I just was wondering, what are the misconceptions about this area why somebody would want to use another city?
So that's a hard one because we didn't learn of this until we started telling some of the people about those numbers. And they said, what about this company? And so we learned and we looked up those specific companies that had successfully crowdfunded, and there were several. And what we learned was that even though they might have lived here or had ties to here, they weren't using our city as it. We don't necessarily know why, but it could be because those specific cities do better in fundraising. There's one specifically, a video that raised about $180,000, and they were doing, they used the city that they're actually going to shoot the video in rather than the city that they live in. So we'll get back to you on that one. Questions?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lauren Bland. I'm the Executive Director of the Hampton Roads Sports Commission. And I love Zach's slide that said last year 2 of the industries that he thought would be great this year are fitness and tourism. That's 100% what I do for a living all day, every day, so you nailed it. My question to you is, what do you think's coming this year?
Yeah, so I think we're going to hopefully innovate things that we, in the past, weren't thinking about doing. So I think we're going to continue to see similar businesses innovate like we have in those industries. And I think people, not only from being here tonight, but will also just realize that it's not about creating an industry that has no ties to here, but it's getting closer and deeper into those industries that will allow us to start building more businesses off of them. And so I think it's similar to what we said last year, but we're going to see more businesses actually try and tackle the innovation piece, right? So 5 years ago, everyone told us that, you know, you still have to go work for corporate America, and this is the game that you have to play. Now, fast forward 5 years, it's okay to start your own business, and people are getting a little bit more gutsy to try and go after and actually solve real problems. So I think as we've grown over the years, we'll see more people tackle the actual solving of problems instead of just trying to build new industries. So I think they'll tag team and get deeper in with more of the industries that we saw up there. Any other questions? Questions? Come on. Kevin, go. You gotta go. You got a question? No. Come on. Andrew, yep. Here,
Chip does.
Cool.
Hi, Zach.
Hi.
So Chip Dodd with Support Services of Virginia. Zach, the other night we were talking about startups, and we have a lot of big companies, a lot of little companies, and then and also when I did my presentation at 1004, talked a little bit about acquisitions.
Yep.
And the other night we talked about franchises. So I didn't hear much in your presentation about, as opposed to starting bootstrapping from the bottom up, what about that entrepreneurial middle ground of saying, pick a company that already exists, but I'm going to use my entrepreneurial spirit to be a startup that way?
Yeah. So the way I would spin that is saying that we started seeing national franchises start to move here, like the Topgolfs and the iFlies of the world. So we're starting to see some of those companies be here. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of franchises in this market, and I think we'll continue to see them to grow. And I think it's franchises just isn't that sexy thing that everyone talks about, right? And so I think as more people want to get into that, the more resources will go away from startups and will start moving over towards franchises. Or you could hire a franchise consultant like FriendNet. I'll send you a check in the mail. Or you send me a check in the mail. Andrea.
I'm Andrea McClellan. I'm a recovering entrepreneur. It's all good. So I have a question. We talked about, my question is simply this. What infrastructure are we missing in Hampton Roads right now? And what could we be doing on a more regional basis to ensure that we've got it here?
Sure. The physical infrastructure is here, the mindset is not. That's what we've been improving over the last 5 years, right? So people are realizing and people are starting to understand that they can control their own destinies, right? Our city, infrastructure-wise, is no different than any other across the country. But people are starting to understand that they can control their own destiny. And so I think as people start to understand that, and people start to want to do that, they'll want to get into it more, right? And so how many of you guys 5 years ago were working for someone and didn't want to start a business? I'm sure it's a lot of you. How many of you now has that number increased and that you don't want to, or that you do want to start a business now? So I think it's a mindset, right? And so people, this area, this country is founded on entrepreneurship, right? And so we just haven't been an area that consumed that entrepreneurial mindset until a few years ago. And so it's new to us. And so there's a guy in Boulder, his name's Brad Feld. He said it takes 20 years. So if we say that day one for me, when we hosted that first meetup was it, we still have 15 years to go. So by changing our mindset, by realizing that people can do what they want to do, I think they'll realize that the infrastructure physically isn't as important as emotionally and finding that they can actually do what they want to do. And good luck. Gabe McCoy. Chandler, you can go up.
Congrats tonight. Way to take the lead. Gabe McCoy, I'm on the briefcase team with a couple of my partners. I have a question regarding capital. You know, my day job helps people with structuring capital, but the markets here are extremely weak. What would you challenge and how would you challenge the capital markets here in Hampton Roads to tailor or change how they approach investing in and making money on startups? 757 Angels stepped into that space. I think there's a lot of capital in this room tonight.
Yep.
I think the perception of what they're used to needs to be shifted. How would you challenge that? What would your recommendations be for this year?
Yeah, so I would challenge and say that anyone that says that financing or things around investing in our area is something that they talk about, to actually walk that walk. So if they have money that they can give, lose it. Be the man, right? So if you say that we need to be more failure friendly, and I'm not sure that we aren't failure friendly, then lose the money and openly say that you lost the money. Make that bet, lose it, and then show everyone that you did and say it's not that big of a deal. So I would challenge anyone that wants to stand up and say, this is the problem, I want to solve it, to actually walk their own talk. So instead of saying capital is the thing that we need to fix, instead say capital is the thing that I see as a problem, and I'm going to invest in all these companies, and if I lose my money, I don't care. And that's what I would do. And so for me, I look at what has been created here as that was a challenge. And so instead of just not trying to find or just move or not try and fix it, I created my own solution. Chandler.
I'm Chandler Turner, and tonight I'm here representing Three Brothers Distillery. Yes, that is a real operational still in the hall, and no, you cannot have any samples. I wanted to ask the people in the room a very simple question. My real professional field is user experience, and it's getting people to understand the things that we're trying, the ideas that we're trying to portray to them. How many people in this room are absolutely certain? Zach spent a few minutes talking about that slide that ranked, what were we, 17th? 19th, excuse me, 19th.
19th.
How many people could explain exactly what we ranked 19th for? Or sure you could do that? Because that's a really, really important thing. That's one of the topics that we talk about around this area all the time, where we have something extraordinarily good to say about ourselves, and that's extraordinary, and it never gets out. I would challenge everybody in this room, Zach, I hope a lot of people get that slide, and make use of it. Send it to people, tweet it, let people know, let people you know in this area know what that slide means.
So it was 3 categories. All these slides and all this video will be up. You can download it, you can rewatch it, you can send it. It's the same link that you bought the on. It's startwithhatch.com/SSCA. It'll be the same information for the next year, and then we'll archive it, and then we'll do one for 2017. And so I think that's great, Chandler, wherever you went. But you do have to understand, and so we can't just win things, or we can't just be in a situation where we're getting praise for something and then do nothing with it, right? And so all these things are happening, yet no one knows about it. And so as you talk about, Gabe, challenging the capital side of it, I would challenge all of us that if the question that I asked earlier is, do you really care about startups and small business? Well, then tell everyone what we just told you about, right? And so if you really care about those things and you want our community to grow, then tell someone and mean it. Jeremy, you have a question? I'll follow up on that. You gotta go to the mic. No, you gotta have the mic.
Thank you. What I would say is, to follow up on Chandler's question, is have you gone to another community outside of this community and challenged people to come here? So, who's done that? Okay. Yeah, Henry and I, we're organizing Pixel Fest. We're really excited about that. We've been given a great opportunity. We want to make the most of it. We went to Richmond yesterday for like a mocap lab and told about 20 game developers to come in and partake in our game jam. And these are people, because we were in a meeting last week at Hatch, the Unity developers group, which is great because people are meeting here. But the thing of it was, those folks hadn't actually made any games yet. They were like just getting rolling, like so many people in the area. And out in Richmond, we talked to people that had made 15 games, but we told them Norfolk's booming. That was all I said. I said, Norfolk's booming, you need to come and see what's going on here. So come partake in Pixel Fest, and we're gonna go to Raleigh, and we're gonna go to DC. We've got speakers coming from Raleigh and DC to come speak at Pixel Fest, and hopefully get those people excited about what's going on in Norfolk. And maybe people that are in DC, where it's super dense and super expensive, are gonna see Hampton Roads as a place to come and actually have the opportunity to grow.
And number 30 on the density, or number 30 on the index DC. Ha.
Yeah, and then we've talked to some people. Raleigh was a place that I thought about moving because it's a game dev hub, and what I do is primarily is game development. And we heard some interesting things about that from a guy who works for Hitbox, which is like a Twitch competitor, and he's based out of Hampton, so he's the community manager there. It's pretty amazing to have somebody who's part of a company that large, and also in gaming that's in our local community. And he said that the Raleigh community is looking for other places to go, so maybe Hampton Roads is a good place for them. So anyway, I just think challenge other people in other communities to come here and see what we've got going on.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Last chance. All right, thank you guys so much for being here. We have until 8 o'clock to continue to look through booths, continue to consume the food. I thank you guys so much for being here. It really means a lot. Thank you, appreciate it. And we will definitely See you guys next year. Take care.